exciting. I'm over here like,
right? You got to jam out. Totally. Welcome, everybody, to this week's Kickass Conversations with Louise and Kim. And we are joined today by Catherine Mettice. Did I say that last name correctly?
Mattice, but that's
Mattice. Oh, I was so close. All right. Thank you. We are going to learn a little bit more about Catherine in a little while, but like we start every show, and if you are joining us live, please drop it in the comments. What are we celebrating today? Louise, what are you celebrating?
Oh, I am celebrating laughter and good friends. Kim, you and I got an opportunity earlier this week and late last week to be in person. So that has been fantastic. And I think just all of that like goodness and fun that we had carried in through the week. And I've just been doing a lot of laughing. And so I am just celebrating that, like regardless of what's going on and how much stress or all of those other things, that just I'm leaning into that and using that as my oxygen mask a little bit too.
And since we were on airplanes, that was really relevant. Catherine, what are you celebrating this week?
Well, it's been a week, as I was just saying before we came on. My roof leaked. I'm in San Diego, where we had some serious rain. So I'm celebrating the weekend and not trying to manage my roof leak situation and work and the scheduling. And I'm going to visit an old friend this weekend. So that'll be nice.
I love that. And I am celebrating for you that it was a roof and not everything else, because I have some friends in San Diego that lost a whole lot. So
mine was just down the wall.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm glad that everything is safe and that you're going to get a nice little respite with a friend.
Thank you.
Yeah. As I mentioned last week, we were heading into the weekend of our daughter's bat mitzvah. So I am still on the high from last weekend's bat mitzvah for my celebration. And I am celebrating that I let myself sleep in late today, because silly me, scheduled my Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like packed my schedule on those days. We got back late Monday night and I'm like, I'll be fine. Not so fine. So I am celebrating that I allowed myself to sleep in. Nice. And even though I know my husband listens every week, I am super excited that tomorrow my daughter will be off at an all-day rehearsal for the musical that she's in, and my husband is taking a quick trip into the States, so I get a day by myself.
Oh, love that. Love that.
Super excited about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say in the comments, I wanted to just say to them, Donna's celebrating connecting with Sabrina from last week. And so I love that connections and that folks are finding special places to connect with our guests. So that's what it's all about. Love, love, love it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for shouting that out. And knowing both Donna and Sabrina personally, that is a fantastic match. And how exciting that they made it here on your Kickass Conversations, because that's what we're all about. Kickass Conversations, Kickass Careers, just do all the Kickass stuff. Which, Catherine, I'm going to just do a little blurb about you really quickly, and then I'm going to let you go and talk about yourself. But Kickass comes into play here as well. So Catherine is the founder and CEO of Civility Partners. Great name, by the way. A consulting firm focused on helping organizations create respectful workplace cultures and specializing in turning around toxic cultures. So needed. Civility Partners clients range from Fortune 500s to small businesses across many industries, and Catherine is a sought-out HR thought leader who has appeared in such venues as USA Today, Bloomberg, CNN, NPR, and many other national news outlets. She's an award-winning speaker, author, and blogger, and has 48 courses reaching global audiences on LinkedIn Learning. Catherine's award-winning book, Back Off Your, here we go, Kick-Ass Guide to Ending Bullying at Work, was hailed by international leadership guru Ken Blanchard as the most comprehensive and valuable handbook on the topic. Catherine, we are so excited to have you here today.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
You're very welcome. Tell us your story. Like, how did you get to where you are and doing all this good stuff in the world?
Yeah, I definitely have a unique career. That's for sure. So I was the director of HR for an organization that had grown from 30 to roughly 50 while I worked there. And when I first got that job, I had just gotten out of college from my bachelor's. My bachelor's is in human communication, and as I was working there, I realized that, so I moved from executive assistant over time as we grow into this role of director of HR. And there was another director who worked there. So he was my peer, and he was an ass. And since we're saying kick ass, I'll just say
I wonder if I worked with him before.
Everyone's got a story. I'm convinced 100% of the world is going to work with an asshole. If you haven't already, it's come in at some point. And so being director of HR, I was, dealing with the problem that he was creating. And so really watching firsthand the kind of damage that he was causing the organization. And I couldn't fix it. People would complain, and I would go to the president, can you address this person's behavior? And he would say things like, that's just how he is. I don't know why it bothers you. Tell them not to let it bother them, and I'm like, well, why am I hiring people into his department and then they turn over? Like, this is causing me extra work. It's hard to manage and hear about it. And then I also felt bullied. So I was a target in addition to being the organizational observer. And so while I was working there, I decided to get a master's degree in communication. And this is where the universe sometimes just comes flying in to point you in a direction. My very first semester of graduate school, my two classes were ethnography. So I had to write a paper about something in my life where I was spending time. And my other class was called The Dark Side of Communication. And that class was about stalking and domestic violence and sibling rivalry and all of the dark communication. And so I'm like, I need a topic for both classes, ding, ding, I'll write about my workplace. And so during that semester, when I was doing research for both of those papers, came across the phrase workplace bullying and realized that there was 40 years, well, at the time, 20 years of academic research on the topic from around the world. And I was not crazy. And it was my leader's response is pretty common. And just became really fascinated by this human phenomenon. And honestly, sort of fascinated by the fact that it seems to generally unfold in the same way. I mean, everyone's got their own story, but like how it happens and what happens is very methodical, no matter who you are, what company you're in. And so that was sort of fascinating, it was very fascinating. So anyway, I ended up doing all of my graduate research on workplace bullying. I wrote my thesis on workplace bullying. I dedicated it to the Post-it Nazi, which is what we called the bully in my workplace. And then, I joke I have a master's in workplace bullying, and took it from there, started a business, wrote my first book, and here we are.
Love that. I don't love that there's an entire world of workplace bullying that needs to be addressed. And right. I mean, back in the day when I was a practicing attorney, I did a lot with domestic violence and got that into consulting in the workplace violence arena as well. So it is amazing to me how people still in 2020, now 2023, are still like, is that really a problem? Yeah, we're talking about 40 years of this language has been around, and this is a real problem.
Yep.
So,
It has been nice to see the paradigm shift. So when I started, literally 100% of the people I knew, and I told, I'm going to start a consulting business around this topic of bullying, every single person said, I don't think you should do that. What is that? That's not even a thing. And I stuck to my guns. I'm like, well, I've read the academic research. I know it's a thing. I just need to find a way to get into an organization. And so that, I'm proud of myself for that, sticking to my guns. And then I would call HR associations, can I come and speak at your chapter meeting? same response. No, we talk about harassment already. What is that? And now here I am all these years later, and I'm glad I stuck to my guns. I was ahead of the curve. I was talking about things long before Me Too and BLM. And it's been interesting to see the paradigm shift over time. So HR at least knows about it, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, I just, on behalf of everybody else in the industry and working on this, thank you for the work that you're doing, because it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is so needed. And sticking to your guns and saying that this is something that's real is something that I think we many people, if not all people, struggle with at some time. Visionaries struggle with at some time. It's like, am I actually seeing something that nobody else is seeing? Is that possible?
Yeah.
And you were seeing it and you said, no, this is a real problem. Let's address it and let's keep addressing it.
Yeah. I had a website. That's where all my clients came from, because eventually someone would think of this phrase and go searching, and there was no competition. So literally people would come across my website and like, can you help me? So yeah.
That's awesome. So today we're going to be talking about assessments and the power of assessments. Okay. Which I find fascinating as we talk about kind of your process and where you got to, and particularly around this conversation that we were just having of like, but it's not even something people were talking about. So do you use assessments?
I do. We use what's called a climate assessment. So it's an employee survey that is assessing the culture. And, of course, I'm familiar with DISC and StrengthsFinder. And so I also specialize now in coaching leaders who engage in bullying behavior. And I do not necessarily use an assessment, but we do talk about DISC sometimes. It'll be a bit of a side note just to help them see, hey, everybody thinks and processes differently. But yeah, so the assessments we're doing are assessing the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
What's the power of doing that? Like what comes from an assessment?
Yeah, great question. So there's two things, depending on the kind of client. So I would say roughly 75% of our clients come to us because we specialize in turning around toxic environments, and they recognize finally that it's toxic. And so they've found us. So in that scenario, and it's the same assessment, the other type of client is like, we already think we're pretty good, but maybe we could do better. The assessment's the same, but the kind of messaging around the data is a bit different. So for example, we had a client that it was a 300-person IT department in a university, and the leader didn't really think there was a problem. He was kind of old school male. Sorry to stereotype, but it was mostly males in this organization, and some women had come forward during Me Too to say that they were not being treated very well. The organization sort of tried to brush it under the rug, and the leader of these 5 women really did not tolerate that, which kudos to her. She backed them into a corner and she went real public and forced them to, they have to be able to say they're taking action and looking into it. So that survey was really able to reveal to the leadership team, who didn't think there was anything wrong because they didn't experience anything wrong, that you have a real culture problem. So for example, 30% of the survey respondents had said that they had witnessed harassment in the last year. So now it's not just those 5 women,
right?
And you've got a bigger problem than that. So that helps in those scenarios and that's unfortunately a big part of our uphill battle. Is usually the narrative is that HR is coming to us for help, and then we have to partner with HR to get the CEO to buy in that there's even a real problem. And it's like HR's over here going, I hear about it, just like I was, I hear about it. I know it's a problem. I can see it's damaging. They don't pick on you. It doesn't affect you because you're the leader. People are going to treat you well. So anyway, I'm giving you a very long-winded answer. And then for the companies that feel like, hey, we're already pretty good, but we'd like to check in, sometimes that's really eye-opening as well, where they'll, it's kind of like, oh, we didn't know people weren't that unhappy. We thought we were good. So the assessment really provides a lot of data and then we can take that and say, all right, let's break this down and figure out exactly what you need to work on to change your culture. Sometimes it's core values, but it's not always that. A lot of organizations want to focus on culture and they like, let's do core values and then we'll do a employee nomination around the core values. And that's nice, but that doesn't change culture. So that's really where we get to dig in and say, all right, what exactly needs to change organizationally and behaviorally?
Yeah. I think one of the tools, like the power tool of assessments, is really it's validating, right? And so it can bring to light some of the things that maybe we knew already, or maybe we suspected or we didn't know, but it does bring to light, and it actually starts to put some language around it, and it gives us a starting line. Right. It gives us that to say, like, here we are today. And I think this is true for all kinds of assessments, right? For DISC or motivator, whatever that looks like that you're doing, even your values. It's like, here, this is who I am today as an organization or as a person. And we can start to now really start to see some of the nuances and start to pull those things out so that we can take action, and bringing some clarity around what it.
Yeah, I like to compare assessments, whether organizational or for individuals, that it's like a snapshot in time, right? Mm-hmm. So during this week when that assessment was open, this was the snapshot of your culture here today when you took the DISC assessment. It's a snapshot in time of you. And then, just like anything, then you can look at a picture and go, I feel like I want to lose weight or change my hair or build some muscle. And then you take another snapshot a year later and you've done those things and it looks different. So it's a snapshot in time, and then you can figure out what you want to change.
Yeah. Well, and it's Louise's favorite word, and I know you mentioned it as well, Catherine, is it's data. Right. And I use a lot of data. I love assessments. I'm actually creating a layered assessment that uses a compilation of different assessments together to give more of a 360, both for individuals and teams, because it's that snapshot and it shows growth and development over time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we can get senses, like our clothes will fit differently. You mentioned, right? Like I can see a snapshot of myself and I might want to change something. My clothes might feel different. Like I can feel a little bit more muscle. Oh, it feels different when I shampoo my hair. But those are relatively subjective, based instead of looking at like, this is the data. This is what we know. And it's, again, just another point in time, but it gives us an opportunity to actually see and make tangible growth and development over time.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the other thing too is it couples nicely with KPIs, right? So when people say, how do we measure success? Well, one clear way is to redo the survey a year later and see if the data changed. And to toot our horn, it often has changed quite a bit. Yep. But then you can also add business results to it too. Do people's are less turnover, or even holding managers accountable, or department heads accountable to the data that's related to them. So finding KPIs that are business related outside of the survey is really helpful too, and then it's even more powerful.
Yeah. What do you think people get wrong around assessments?
Ooh, I have a very passionate answer. HR needs to recognize that they are not social scientists. There are tons of surveys out there. Culture Amp is a big one. I don't know that they're a competitor, but definitely they're doing surveys. HR, so if you're going to do a survey, that makes you a social scientist. And that means you need to have a research question in mind. And then you develop your survey based on that. So our survey we have a template that looks at 5 constructs that over time, through all of this work I've done, I feel that those are the 5 things that really measure culture. But where I'm going with this is a lot of times HR feels like they did an engagement survey and that the engagement survey scores are fine. In fact, actually that IT department, they were shocked when they saw our data because their Gallup Q12 engagement survey had really fantastic scores. I'm like, well, let's think on this. The people who aren't engaged probably don't fill it out, first of all, because they're not engaged. Versus
and it goes with it.
Yeah, we come in like there's a public problem. It's a big issue, and everyone's like, oh yeah, let me get in there and share my spiel. And so just to be aware that if you're using an employee engagement survey, that means you're measuring engagement, but that's different than your culture. So that's a big mistake that people make. For sure. And also, I'm sorry, I've seen some pretty horrible survey questions, not culture amps. The other one will remain nameless, but there's another very large survey out there that is big in hospitality. And some of the questions are appalling to me. For example, one of them is essentially rating the leaders on ethics. Are they ethical? And it's like, ethical around what? Money, behavior, harassment? What does that even mean? A, and B, what could you do with that information? What if everybody says, no, they're not ethical? Well, since you don't know what they're not ethical about, how do you fix that? So our surveys also are very action oriented. Every single question, you can take an action around it.
Right. Well, and I love that you said it's right. It's that what are you looking to solve?
Yep.
Right. If you're building a survey, if you're using assessment or picking an off-the-shelf assessment, what are you solving for through that assessment? Because very often people pick the wrong assessment to solve a problem. And then they're, like you just said, they end up saying, oh no, everything's fine when it's not. And we do it ourselves as individuals, right? Well, I'm going to go take the 16 personalities or an MBTI and I'm going to know everything about myself through that one assessment when you don't, like a very thin slice of yourself and how you operate. And it talks nothing about really how you react in a team, how you react as a leader, like, right.
Yep.
So we want to be testing for what the result is that we want.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things I think too is sometimes we forget is that we'll do an assessment and the results are fantastic or whatever that looks like. And we don't do anything about it, right? We're taking the assessment to what? Right? Yeah. Check a box. And we're not really using the data or the information and nothing comes of it. The real power of an assessment isn't the first time you do it. It's all the other times you do it. Right. And so you can see where you're intentional and where you're paying attention. You can see if you're moving that needle or not. And you can see if it's making the difference you want it to make. Are you showing up differently, right? At work, if you're taking a DISC, are you making changes? Because that's really what you want to be doing. So yeah, it's all of that. It's that reflection piece. And it's like recognizing that it's not the first time you take it. Is going to give you any information really at all. It's what you're going to do with it and then how you're going to reflect back on it.
Yeah. And I would piggyback on that too. Another mistake is that organizations don't share the results. So people spend the time and then they have no idea what the results were. And then, no actions taken. And that's where, not to pick on culture amp, but the culture amps of the world, it's like the HR person can pick the questions, they do the survey, and then I don't know what happens to that. I don't use them, obviously. But so we really come at it from a consultative approach where it's like, we're doing the survey with you. We partner with you to make sure the survey is tailored to get at whatever it is you think you need to know and what we think you need to know. And then we stick around after the survey. We lead the organization through some planning sessions to pick through the data and figure out what are some sort of low-hanging fruit, high-impact items that you can, so that when you announce the survey results, you can essentially say, here's the gist of the results, here's the summary of it. we're already going to do X, Y, and Z, so that, I always talk with leaders about showing that good faith that you read the data and you're taking action. And then, at that announcement meeting too, to say, here's the 3 things we're going to do right now, or we've already started, and then stay tuned. There's going to be a plan that we'll be publishing. And especially in these toxic work environments where we come in, so that employees can essentially track it and pay attention and see, like, are they doing the things that were in the plan? So having a consultant to help you figure out what to do with the data. And then often we end up doing it too, doing a lot of what's on the plan because the organization doesn't have the bandwidth. So it's important to react pretty quickly.
Yeah. You just touched on 2 things so I worked in a number of organizations that we would do these assessments for different reasons, and we'd have the consultant come in and everybody's all gung ho. And then as the employees, depending on what level you were at, you generally just got a very high level summary of your results. And so you don't even know what they mean. You don't know what other team members, how and where. So you just get this very thin summary. Unless you're at the top or unless you're manager, and maybe then you know what your team is, but then the manager doesn't know what to do with it. So what I loved is you said, in just building it, it's not just what the organization is looking for, because I did work for a couple of organizations who were like, well, this is just the information we want. The consultant would push back and they're like, no, this is the information we want. So if you are going into this process as an organization, as a leader, listening to your consultant who actually has something to share with you to say, maybe you would consider doing these things as well. That would be our recommendation. It is not a ploy to get extra money. It is because they genuinely want to assist your organization. So I'm just going to throw that plug in there. Yeah. And the other thing is when giving the information back, that training to know what to do with it. Because very often just having that thin summary or giving the information, getting the booklet at the managerial, the directorial level, they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, gee, thanks.
Now we have this thing that sits on the shelf and it's like, I know that X, Y, and Z means all these different things, but I have no idea how to use it, so we're not going to use it. Well, great. You just spent all that time, money, and you have really, really, really valuable information that you're not using.
Yep. And then they'll just rerun the survey a year from now and not do anything yet again. Yeah, I don't understand.
Well, and why has nothing changed? Why has nothing changed? We did the survey in December. It's December again. Like, why didn't it change?
Well, and to add to that too, I know a lot of times, or going back to that survey, who shall remain nameless, one of the things that they offer is, like, your company does the survey and then they provide this sort of workbook that the company can download, and each manager can then theoretically be tasked with their own data, and they're supposed to create an action item, at least one, that would change the data. That's nice, but managers don't freaking know how to do that. I'm sorry, but they don't. And so it's just another way where it's like, well, that's a nice value add if people know how. But the fact is that, and I'm going to get into my toxic work environment stuff. We are trained as a society to look at harassment or big things, big behaviors that are clearly illegal. And so you give a manager something that says people are disengaged. Like, what does that even mean? How do I fix that? It's like, I've been in my harassment prevention training where I know if I hear a dirty joke, I'm supposed to report it. But we've really got to get out of, and I think HR is part of the problem, is that HR is trained to be so compliant, and then that's how that messaging comes out. So as this paradigm shift that we've seen since COVID around culture, that's becoming more and more. Culture is sticky and fluffy and gooey. There's no law that you can't be rude. You can be rude, but it hurts your organization. But a manager doesn't know how to fix that. So there's all sorts of necessary skills that are such a big gap in, what they should be doing and what they've been trained to do in terms of management. Yeah. So
it's funny because you say that, and to me, it gets to the heart of what we miss in our business schools, in our law schools, in our medical schools, and all of these professional schools that we go to. We have a class or a workshop on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And it's generally like high level leadership. We don't ever get taught how to manage other people and what to do. And I know many of my clients, that's their big struggle is like, I built this organization, I built this beautiful team, and I'm spending all my time managing them. And I'm like, well, right, because you don't know how to lead. You just know how to do the things really, really well. And then you hired people to do them for you. So, right, it's moving into that. And again, the power of assessments with this is like, we can identify where the problems are and then have somebody help you with them.
Right.
So I think that's one of the things that I'm hearing in our conversation is the assessments themselves can be super powerful, but not if they stand on their own.
Yep. Right. Yeah. And people need to be trained on what to do with that stuff. It's funny you're just talking about that, Kim. I just had a coaching call yesterday, my last call, and same, just what you were saying. He's been promoted through the ranks, and then he feels like he's too busy because he either has to do things himself because no one else is doing it right, or he has to explain things 5 million times and it's still not right and all this stuff. And then he told me yesterday they were looking at hiring an HR person, and I'm like, A, hallelujah, and B, do not hire an HR professional who does not have experience in talent development, because that, I'm like, I will volunteer my time to help you find the right HR person, because you are going to be spinning your wheels if you don't have someone who can help you with the people skills that you need and they need. Everybody knows. So anyway, sorry.
Right. And this is not to bag on HR people, right? Because there are different levels, or not even levels, there are different components to HR. And the thing that most organizations are guilty of is they just say this is HR and they put everything into one. And it's very different skill sets, and it's very different strengths and competencies that these individuals have.
Yep.
And it's all lumped into one. So this is not to bag on HR.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And that's one thing I see is, I kind of joke, HR has to be a ninja. HR knows all sorts of things they need to be doing. It's a matter of getting the budget and the resources and the time. And so if their CEO isn't savvy enough, and I see that all the time in my sales calls, it's like HR is pleading for help, and the CEO is like, I don't know, do we really need this? So no, it's not HR. It's on the CEOs.
Yeah, for sure. Louise, were you going to jump in and say something? I thought.
Well, and as we're talking about, right, like, how do we help people get the resources that they really need? And so this isn't just about like fixing a toxic work environment, like culturally, but it's like on the individual level. How do we make sure that those people, either like on whatever side of the fence they land, right? Oftentimes, folks are contributing to a toxic environment and they have no idea. And so helping those folks navigate through that and making sure they have the skills and the resources, and that they know a little bit more about what's happening, the education around that. And so it's both sides. But I think that's really what we all are saying, and what I see as well, is this real kind of transformation around like what skills are we actually really needing in the workplace? Because that is very much changing into those, they're not soft skills, they're harder skills, right? Because we don't sit and study them or read them or think we can take a few minute, Excel course, right? Like it's really more about not just what we know, it's about who we are and what we do with what we know.
Yeah. And that's where assessments are so important these days, especially with everybody talking about culture and psychological safety, and vulnerability at work has to be more allowed. And in order for people to function, and sorry, my brain's all over the place. I have so much to say. Like the work-life balance, that's not a thing. It's work-life integration, and people could fight that, but that's what it is. I'm sitting at home next to a leaky roof right now because that's, it is what it is. So to be able to measure, do people feel psychologically safe? Do they feel included? Because only then can they be as productive and provide the kind of quality work that any CEO is looking for. And it does still absolutely boggle my mind that sometimes I have to have these arguments with CEOs. Like, how does it not make, like, I can't give you a super clear ROI that if somebody feels X on the inclusivity scale, that they're going to produce 30% more. There's, sure, there's grandiose data out there, but doesn't it just make sense if somebody feels good, they would produce more? Why am I arguing with you around this?
Well, it's so interesting because I just had this conversation with a new client the other day, and he was telling me, he's like, I feel like, and he's in the HR space. He's on talent management side. And he said, I feel trapped because I'm being told I have to do all of these things as my role. And I know what I want to do and what would really benefit the organization is this over here. How do I get the buy-in to move the organization forward so that we're focused on the human beings, the human capital that is here, which is really the most important part of any organization. I don't care if you make widgets, sneakers, or, parts for the, whatever. I was trying to come up with something cool and I totally didn't. Right? It doesn't matter. Your most important thing is your human capital. And so to have these conversations over and over and over again to try and convince people of that in 2023 is mind-boggling.
Yep. I will say one thing that we sometimes throw into our employee survey, that climate assessment, is to ask people how their work environment affects their productivity. So if we know it's fairly toxic and we're still having to try to, we got the budget to do the survey and we're partnered with HR, but we've still got a ways to go on the CEO and getting that buy-in, we'll kind of ask these questions around it. Feeling excluded, have you witnessed harassment or something ugly in the last year? And then you can ask some questions around, like, rate the extent that this has affected your work product, your quality of work, whether or not you're loyal. So that can be a way to get in there. But yeah, it kind of bugs me that we still have to, like, don't you just care about people? Why do we not just care about people?
Well, and I feel like those are great questions, and I'm super glad you're asking them. And I still worry about the people, because I think about the people who are like, I don't 100% trust that whatever I tell you isn't going to get me in trouble.
Right.
I'm going to tell you everything's fine because otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. Versus being able to, and people do genuinely show up and they're like, yeah, I'm going to circle that bubble and say, no, it sucks. Like, right? They're going to be loud and proud. But there's others that are really, really scared.
Yep.
And
so that's a part of our messaging when we do surveys, is to make that very clear that it comes to our SurveyMonkey account. The only thing the leaders get from us is a PDF report that just all of that's in there, and it's said several times to hopefully get more participation. I need to plug my laptop in.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Catherine is plugging in her laptop. We would love to just let you know that if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. We would be glad to do that. And Louise, this harkens back to the conversations that we've been having over the last couple of weeks in the collective, just in terms of like the depth of the importance of how we show up at work, and particularly around like how we have an opportunity to be authentic. I mean, I know we've been talking a lot about authenticity.
Yeah. And I love this because, in the collective, when every couple of weeks we're having these conversations about, what we talk about here on the podcast. So I love that kind of that extension, and we could get into more details and get into like, how does that impact? And our conversations, and kind of one of the reasons why we have the collective, is really about helping people find that voice, right? Helping them step into that authenticity, but recognizing, right? Like oftentimes, like, what do you have to lose, right? And really being able to find, right, a place. And it's so tough, right? When you're in a toxic work environment, it's like a bad relationship, and it gets really, really hard. We get very quiet often because we don't want to rock the boat, or we feel like there's so much at risk. And so, right, having a collective, having a group of people who are all going through the same thing, right? Here we are coming from like different corners, right, of North America right now, and we're all having the same conversation. Our clients are all having, right, very similar conversations about that. And so really kind of diving in and knowing, same with you, Catherine, the just the workplace bullying itself, like we're not alone in the things that are going on. So really that sense of community and finding that, so that when you are presented with an opportunity to answer a survey, that you're feeling like you have a little bit more autonomy, and that you can be authentic, that you can say what's really going on, and finding your way through that.
Yeah. I hear a lot from employees in my clients that, I always share my story about how I got into it. And I think they're like, okay, she gets it because she knows how I feel.
Yeah.
And just to highlight that, workplace bullying is associated with PTSD, thoughts of suicide. It's abuse at work. It's basically domestic violence at work.
Yeah.
So it's super important that if anybody is going through that they take care of themselves, get some therapy, find your way out of that organization. If they're making it clear that they don't care about what's going on with you, then you got to get out.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, I just got goosebumps.
Yeah. No, it's no joke. It's
not.
No, there was I had a legal client once who was going through, we were safely getting her out of her marriage because it was an abusive marriage, and she was working in a toxic workplace where she was being harassed there. So it was like both sides that we were dealing with at the same time. And it is no joke. Like, she literally was fearing for her life in everywhere she went. Yep. So, it is, I talk a lot with a lot, particularly women, but not all women, just the microaggressions. We have terms that we can use for that now, which hopefully allow people to have a little bit of language so that they can start to make inroads. But the reality is those of us who have either experienced it, see it, witness it, hear about it, don't make a joke about it, right? Is to be there and to hear them and to say, yes, that's happening. Let me help support you in that. Because that's the only way this nonsense changes. Oh, I can swear. This bullshit needs to change.
Do it.
All right, my friends, what are our golden nuggets? What are our big takeaways from our conversation today?
Catherine, go. We were like, oh my gosh.
I'm like, are we waiting for comments? Who are we asking? You go first.
Yeah, they can comment too. Everybody can comment.
I think my golden nugget, Catherine, was something that you had said early on, is really around like, what is the question that we really want to solve, right? And getting really clear on what that is within an organization, personally, whatever that looks like. It's like there's a crunchy bit there, and what's the question, so that you can be more clear when you come out the other side. So I just really love that, because I think we forget sometimes, especially around assessments, we forget sometimes to ask that question. It's just, this is going to be a solution to something. And that's just not true.
It's not
it's the next big assessment. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
You should do it.
Yeah. How about yourself?
Gosh, I don't know. We talked about so many things. I just appreciate that you're, helping people do epic shit, per Kim's sign back there. Everything you've said, it's important for CEOs to be more mindful of culture and how important it is. And hopefully, silver lining from COVID, that we are moving in that direction. You've got the younger generation coming up through the ranks that have been in a more emotionally intelligent kind of realm, and learning more about it. So I think the paradigm will continue to change. And yeah, I wasn't here to bash HR. I know deep in my soul, I'm one of them. They're trying, and but you can only do what your CEO gives you permission to do, and then you got to be a ninja a little bit and try to, army crawl your way through things that need to happen.
100%. And I didn't think you were bashing. I wanted to make sure everybody else did. I think my big takeaway from today is really that idea of like assessments are incredibly powerful, but they're only powerful if you take action.
Yep.
Right? Like it's not going to do any good on a shelf. Don't just take it to tick a box. Take the action that you learn from taking the assessment.
Yes.
Catherine, it has been a joy, and I'm going to find a way to get on your calendar just to chat more because I just really have loved this. So
sounds good.
So we would love to. I forgot to pop the thing up, so I'm going to quickly do this. If anybody is interested in joining us in the collective, we are getting ready to open up our winter cohort. So come join us at yourkickasscareer.com. And if you're interested in checking out Civility Partners, that's the website. Catherine, where else can they find you?
Just type in my name. I'm all over the internet. Like you said, I'm actually up to 49 LinkedIn courses as of last week. They've published another one in Chinese, and I'm everywhere. I speak at a lot of conferences. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm very passionate about giving tangible, useful information around a fluffy word like culture. So, if you join our newsletter, you'll get something every week that's not sales, it's not anything. It's just tips for interpersonal skills, culture skills, organizational stuff. So, yeah. And
I am on the LinkedIn newsletter, and she's absolutely right. It's good stuff. So you're welcome. And I always do this because they're going to move them. Everything you need to know about Catherine is in the show notes, and those show notes are somewhere. They're attached somewhere to this video.
But down below the side.
Yeah, who knows?
Somewhere. They're just attached.
Thank you for just being here with us today. What a great conversation. What a start of a great conversation, too, I hope for many. And thanks for some laughter today as well. It's been such a joy, Catherine, to chat with you. And thank everyone for tuning in today.
Absolutely. All right. Until the next time, everyone.
Bye for
now.
Bye for now.